All right, today we're going to talk about Peter Bogdanovich's documentary, The Great Buster. And I really don't like this hat, I gotta tell you that much. I'm not a huge fan right now. I'm not gonna do that for the rest of the review. It's a lot of hat for what I'm doing right now.
I don't know what to say.
The Great Buster is a documentary, of course, about Buster Keaton, the great silent film star. I kind of knew what I was getting into when I saw it. The easiest examples of low-hanging fruit in Hollywood-based, documentaries. It's a star of the silent film era, someone who's greatly looked up to as a creator in film. And if there's one thing that Hollywood loves, it's talking about Hollywood. Now, Buster Keaton is one of my favorite writers, actors, directors. And so this is a very interesting film for me. So I want to talk a little bit about what the film did really well, some things that I think the film kind of missed the mark on, and just some general questions that I had. First is, it does a really good job of explaining to you the life and times of Buster Keaton. If you don't know who Buster Keaton is and you're going into this completely blind, it's a great film. It explains how he got into acting. He started as a vaudeville star at a very young age, about 4 or 5 years old. He moves into acting, he moves into writing and directing, and he really does have kind of a golden period in the 20s where he made some of the most prolific silent films of the generation. It's probably the only big positive that I have to say about it. And it's not to say that the film is bad, it's just to say that the film serves its utility as kind of an encompassing documentary about an actor's life. And so in about the first 45, 50 minutes, you get a really good story that is communicated effectively. Whether you're somebody who doesn't know who Buster Keaton is, or whether you're like me and you're a big fan, you're still going to learn some things, and it really does chronicle a man's entire life, about 60, 70 years in film and TV. I think the film missed the mark in a couple of ways. And one is that they have a lot of fun editing this film. And that's in no way an inherently bad thing. I'm going to try to have fun with this when I'm done with it. I might not succeed, but it's the goal. They have a lot of moments where they're kind of very self-aware, and they'll make a joke about how they're talking about a certain topic, but oh, we'll come back to that later. And it's very breaking the fourth wall in terms of the narrative construction. And that's fine. The problem is the things they choose to come back to for the last third of the film are really damaging in some ways, in the sense that the last third of the film, after you spend an hour talking about Buster Keaton and who he was and how he lived his life and how eventually he died, is a highlight reel of 10 of his best films from the 1920s. So whereas with most documentaries, you would leave the film and say, I really want to go see some Buster Keaton films, I really want to go watch these things and experience what I just learned about for an hour, you've now kind of seen the best bits of all these films. And for me, who's watched a lot of them, I kind of found it boring, but I found it really frustrating that when I was watching it with people who didn't know Buster Keaton, who I now kind of wanted to take and show these movies, they've already seen the best bits. That feels not only strange, but it also feels kind of lazy just to put in 20 or 30 minutes explaining great gags, especially when they left out so much behind the jokes, behind the gags, and kind of behind the style of what made Buster Keaton great. So the big comparison that you'll often hear is that in silent films, you really had 3 people who were innovators. You had Charlie Chaplin, of course, you had Harold Lloyd, and you had Buster Keaton. And the example people often will give is that Charlie Chaplin kind of innovated the, if I put a banana peel on the ground, I'm going to slip on it. Therefore, the audience expects that. Harold Lloyd would take that and he would add a lot more stakes to it, and he would do a banana peel on the roof of a train, for instance, so that I'm going to fall on it, I'm going to fall off the train, and now there's drama added to it. And what Buster Keaton really excelled at was taking a banana peel, throwing it on the ground, and then spending 5 minutes walking around it to make you uncomfortable, and just kind of second-guessing the audience and really getting into like a weird meta-narrative comedy. And those were kind of concepts about film and storytelling that the film doesn't necessarily deal with. What actually made these films not just interesting at the time, but why they're so lasting. Why if you show a 20 or 30-minute highlight reel to an audience in a film like this, they're going to be interested because the things that he's doing subvert your expectations. The film is called Buster Keaton: A Celebration, and it works in that sense, but it does feel like it's kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, right? Is it a documentary talking about the artist, or is it just kind of a film that's trying to get you up to speed about who he was and then rolling you through kind of like a Hall of Fame type reel? And in that sense, it's good and it's effective and it's enjoyable and it's definitely a good movie. But what I would be more likely to tell people is I would still recommend going out and maybe just reading a couple articles about who he was and then watching some of his best films on Netflix or on YouTube. A lot of his films are public domain now because of their age and because of when they were actually incorporated. I would just watch those and then maybe see this movie afterward, as opposed to using this as a springboard getting into Buster Keaton. Does that make it a bad film? No. Is Peter Bogdanovich a bad director? No. So if you're like Hollywood and you like stories about Hollywood, You'll probably enjoy Buster Keaton. It's a tragic life and times. He's one of the greatest examples of an actor who was just kind of screwed over by not just the industry, but by technology. It seems like he's somebody who kind of loses at every turn as the 1920s fold into the 1930s, as silent films roll into talkies. And it's definitely a character that you should feel for, and someone who in many ways is kind of a forgotten star. You also get to see at least 2 minutes of Quentin Tarantino praising somebody who isn't Quentin Tarantino, and that was really interesting to me. Okay.
It's gonna ruin Buster Keaton.
That was a real pisser. All right, guys, so with that, we finally wrapped up the reviews for the Loft Film Fest. We saw many, many, many movies. Almost all of them were fantastic. Really, the only one that I didn't like, not to keep harping on it, was The House of Sweat and Tears, which it's a little too much tears, no sweat. The thing about a film fest, obviously, and especially about one that's curated like the Loft Film Fest is that you're going through and you're seeing films from all around the world, and if nothing else, it always expands your awareness of art. It expands your kind of your awareness of different storytelling techniques, different filmmakers that you might want to start following, and you also just learn things about different backgrounds, different cultures, and people, the way that they look at storytelling and the way that they feel the world is represented through this art, this medium. So it was a blast. I would say if you can, try to sign up for Loft Film Fest number 10 coming next year. I know I'll be going and seeing a lot more movies and hopefully not getting sick. I'm going to blame Tuscan for my illness, and probably, if I had to blame anybody in particular, I'm going to blame Cliff Campbell, whose hand I shook because I chose to. The nice thing is that with the Loft here in town, they do a lot of international films still. They do a lot of films early in their releases and before they've come out nationwide. So hopefully we can contribute a little bit. Actually, we might do a little bit.
You left your phone on?
Enjoy the videos, and if you want to see more of them, then you come back and you see more of them. It's pretty common sense. You click the button, you click that button, and then it'll push it to you and tell you when new videos are out. You don't have to look, you don't have to think, you don't have to do anything. You'll be living like me. You just autopilot all day, every day. I'm out here, I'm doing voices and talking about whether or not Tyrell's trailer sucked, which it did. You could be living the dream. We'll see you guys. Thank you very much for joining, following, whatever the fuck. Have a nice day. I'm supposed to walk over here. Oh, and also we plan to do like a regular release schedule, not this daily stuff, because I gotta live and do stuff too. But we'll have stuff out pretty regularly, and we'll let you guys know what that schedule is. Now I'm actually leaving.
Silence your phone!